everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Becca and I'm so glad that you're here with me today. This is my houseplant channel where we talk about all the houseplant things. Have I said houseplants a lot? I feel like I only said it twice so far, but it already feels like a lot because it's been 15 seconds. Welcome back. I'm so glad you're here, or welcome in, I guess. Welcome to my home. This is my typical filming corner. I've taken a break from this corner for a little while because I felt like we needed a bit of a change. So we went over there for a while and now we're back. So anyway, today we are going to be talking about 5 plants that I refuse to try. I've never had them and I don't ever want to. And I think this is an interesting thing because I'm a person where in other parts of my life, I like to try things out to make sure that I for sure don't like them. Food, adventures, people, you know, I like to give things a chance, but there's just certain things, I guess, mostly in houseplants where I'm like, I'm not interested. And I think a big reason is I've seen a lot of other people struggle with these plants, and so that makes me not want to try. And I feel like I'm saving myself a lot of heartbreak by making this decision. If you have a different opinion, you can let me know and maybe you can change my mind. We will see. This video is also sponsored by Green Chef and we will talk more about them a little bit later. The first plant that I absolutely refuse to try is the Alocasia poly. And this one is strictly because I have only ever seen people have bad experiences with this plant. Maybe I can think of one time where I saw somebody kind of enjoy the plant until it got spider mites and died. So Alocasia just in general are like spider mite magnets. There's a few different plants that I've realized that spider mites really love. Alocasia, Syngonium, and that's been my experience so far. Those two are big spider mite magnets. If I think of another one, I'll insert it like in text. And as a person who sort of struggles with spider mites pretty consistently, I'm not interested in even entering the chat on that situation. So I have only ever seen dead, dying, or close to dying Alocasia polys online, unless it was like at a conservatory or somebody recently bought it and it hadn't had time to really settle in. And I feel like Alocasia are one of those plants that need a lot of light and humidity and just care that are not as typical with most houseplants. I mean, okay, let me rephrase that. Let's say they need more light than most houseplants. And with the dark leaves, you'd think that they don't necessarily need all of that light, but every single time I've ever talked about Alocasia on my channel, people who are diehard Alocasia fans will tell me it needs way more light than you think. And so I think they're right. I mean, I have a few Alocasia in my home and they're doing okay, but I think if they had more light, they would explode. And so I've considered putting them outside on my shaded patio, and that's still a possibility this summer. We will have to see. It's been like very, very hot. So I have my ficus outside right now and they're totally loving it, as they always do. I'm a little bit more nervous to put smaller plants out there because the pots are so small and they will dry out so fast. So I don't know, I'm a little bit on the fence about putting my Alocasia outside because they are all pretty small. But in general, the Alocasia poly is just not one that I'm interested in whatsoever. The next plant that I have no interest in is the Philodendron Birkin. And I have said this from the moment that I saw it hit the market. And maybe I was a little annoying about it, but I was like, I have no interest in that plant. I'm not interested. It is ugly. It just does not look very exciting. I don't know, just generally upright Philodendron, don't do it for me. Like trailing Philodendron or like climbing Philodendron, super into it, but Philodendron that are just like grow up, not into it. So some examples would be the Congo Rojo or the Pink Princess, even is one of the more iconic you know, upright Philodendron. But the Pink Princess does put out aerial roots, so that one kind of doesn't really count for this category, I suppose, but the Congo Rojo is a good one. I guess if I was to compare its growth habit to anything, it would be pretty similar to Aglaonema or something like that. And I only have so much room for plants like that in my collection, and if I wanted that type of growth habit, I would just go for an Aglaonema because I like those so much more anyway. But I don't know, like I feel like when they have a lot of variegation, when the white is really pronounced, they're super beautiful. But when they don't, I just don't find them to be very exciting. And I think it's a plant that if I was not into plants and didn't know about like the full breadth and width and height of all of the plants that I could own, that plant might attract me. But knowing that there's so many better options, I feel like I'm making the right decision by just not going for it. So if you have a Birkin, let me know what you think, because it was a really like hot and heavy plant. Like everybody wanted one, everybody got one, and then I kind of just stopped hearing about them after a while. So I feel like it's one of those plants that we kind of forgot about. And I actually have a running list of plants that we forgot about. The second plant on that list is the Pilea peperomioides. I never see people talk about that plant anymore, which makes me sad because it's a really great plant. But either way, the Philodendron Birkin, not for me. We're going to take a moment to talk about today's sponsor, which is Green Chef. Green Chef is a CCOF certified organic company, and I get so excited every time I get a box from them because it means that my week just got that much easier. Green Chef makes cooking simple so that I can spend more time actually enjoying the meal rather than stressing about finding all the ingredients at the grocery store. I love that everything is portioned out so I don't have to buy full-size quantities of ingredients that I'm only going to use like 1 or 2 times, and then they sit in the back of my pantry and I forget about them. And what's really great is they have options for every lifestyle: keto, paleo, vegan, vegetarian, fast and fit, Mediterranean, and gluten-free. And now you can mix those preferences all in one box. So I tend to go for more of the vegan and vegetarian options because I really love that Green Chef's plant-based recipes are full of plant-based proteins and wholesome sides. But Daniel is much more of a meat eater, so I love knowing that we can now order meals to suit both of our preferences in one box. It's really awesome. So if you're interested in trying out Green Chef for your family or even for yourself, you can use my code DELAPLANTS135 to get $135 off plus free shipping on your first box. Go to greenchef.com for more details. Okay, I don't know how this is going to land with you guys, but I'm really not into Peperomia like at all. I do have a Peperomia behind me. This is the watermelon Peperomia. And okay, there are a few Peperomia that have really stuck out to me, but will I ever consider myself a Peperomia collector? No. So the one that really stuck out to me was obviously the watermelon, but also the Peperomia Frost. I really love the Peperomia Frost. I had one a couple years ago, and I don't think it survived the move, or maybe it died before I moved. I don't really remember the timeline, but I haven't really felt a super big urge to buy it again. Although, I don't know, maybe eventually I will. But again, with the upright plants, I just don't have a lot of space in my home for plants that have to just sit on a table and can't climb or can't hang or anything like that. I have lots of room for hanging and climbing plants with my wall, and if it's not that kind of a plant, it's not going to be, I don't know, a super prominent. It's not going to be a super prominent part of. Sorry, my camera died. Classic throwback to the old the old me with my old videos. That used to happen to me all the time, and I'd have to wait like hours for my battery to charge. But now I can just pop in a new battery. So anyway, yeah, any plant that just, it can't hang, it can't climb, it just needs to sit on a table, those are not going to be very prominent pieces in my houseplant collection, just because based on the way that my collection works and the types of ways I like to display plants, it just doesn't really work for me. So with that being said, Peperomia is kind of a cheater because I have had this plant before, but there's a lot of Peperomia that I haven't had. So I wrote down specifically the baby rubber tree. I've never had one, I've never been interested in it. And it just sort of, after I wrote that down, I just sort of realized, actually, I think it's just a Peperomia thing. Like, I think they're beautiful to visit, but to bring them to my home, I'm just not very interested. Okay, the next plant that I have never owned and probably never will is Oxalis, specifically the purple Oxalis, or also there's a green version. And for some reason, I have just never been interested in this plant. I feel like it's a plant that would do better outdoors rather than indoors. Like, it kind of reminds me of Caladium. Like, Caladium are very beautiful and colorful and striking, but how well do they actually do in your home? I feel like they don't actually do that well long term, and I don't want plants that are going to be basically a long-standing bouquet. Like, I want plants that I can have for years, and I don't feel like I've seen many people have an Oxalis for like literally years, because I don't really know anything about it, but it just isn't a plant that I see people have for a long time. At least one that looks really happy. I do think it's a really cool texture, like to add to your plant wall or like a plant shelf or something like that, because they like open and close and it's like an odd shaped leaf. So texture wise, in a bunch of plants, I think it's a great idea. but I just can't get behind it. I'm not really interested in it. And I also don't really like colorful houseplants. So actually you'll notice 99.9% of my houseplants are just straight up green and, you know, variegated sometimes, but most of them are just green. Like I have my begonia, I have a purple begonia and then another like more like neon pink begonia. But those are really the only plants in my collection that have like color. I'm looking around, but yeah, most of them are like different shades of green. And so maybe that's why I'm not interested in Oxalis. And I've also never been interested in like the red aglaonema or anything like that. I just prefer green houseplants because I think that the green looks really nice with like the natural elements of my home. My home is very earthy in color palette and like design and stuff like that. I mean, does my house even have a design? I'm not sure. Sometimes I get a little comparative and I like compare myself to YouTubers who like do design work as their job. It's a nice reality check because for me, sometimes I get into that hole and I'm like, well, how come my house doesn't look like that? If you ever feel that way about my collection, like, well, why doesn't my collection look like hers? Or why can't I have a huge plant wall like that? Well, number one, if you want the plant wall, you should build it, always. But also, there's no pressure to have a collection as big as mine and like as intense as mine and have an entire room dedicated to it, because this is literally my job. Like my job is to have plants and to talk about them and to care about them and to care for them. Of course, I'm gonna care about them, but to care for them. And I have, you know, well, I don't work 40 hours a week, but you know what I mean? Like I have an entire work week to take care of them. And when I had like a regular job, my houseplant collection was very, very small. Like I think I had 20, maybe 30 at the most at that time. I have old houseplant collection videos that you can check out. But when I was a teacher for a year, my collection was not very big and I was also pretty new to everything. So if you're just walking into the hobby and you're seeing YouTubers' collections and you're thinking that you have to get to that level like really quickly, don't do that. You're gonna burn out and it's gonna be really expensive and just like absolutely not worth your time. And there is a really beautiful red cardinal just like sitting in this tree out here and I keep looking at it. I'm sorry, it's just so beautiful. I love cardinals so much. Anyway, and the last item on the list is Calathea. So I think I've had one true Calathea maybe one time and it wasn't for very long. I think it was the white fusion and I think that one is a Calathea, but it might be a Gapurtia. But what I've realized is the plants that were once considered Calathea that I really liked actually were reclassified as Gapurtia. So that would include the Orbifolia and the Zabrina. I've had those two most notably. You might remember those from my videos in the past, but they were reclassified as Gapurtia. So I'm just not interested in the typical Calathea, like the rattlesnake Calathea or like the peacock Calathea. Basically, those don't really interest me at all, just because number one, they need a lot of humidity and upkeep with watering, and they just need more care. And I am not a person who enjoys that kind of a thing. Like I like caring for my plants, but I like being able to go like a week or two between taking care of them so that I feel like I still have a life. Like my life is not just constantly maintaining the collection. Although it is, again, my job to do this, so it is a lot of my life to maintain the collection. But, you know, plant chores videos would be really boring if every single time I was just watering the plants, which is a lot of my plant chores, so I don't film it every time. If I have to do that like more than once every 10 days or so, I'm not really interested in the plant because I don't like that type of maintenance. So for that reason, Calathea have never really been it for me. And also you have to give them distilled water for them to have like really beautiful leaves with no burns. A lot of people will ask me like, my Calathea is super happy, but it has, you know, burnt edges and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And they're not doing anything wrong. It's just the fact that the water is burning the leaves. So all of that being said, these are the 5 plants that I am just not interested in having and will probably never own. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any that you'd like to add to the list, you can leave it down in the comments below. And yeah, check out Green Chef if you haven't already. I really love them. They make cooking and just life so much easier. So thank you so much for watching this video and I will see you in the next one. Bye!